Hello again, everybody. Welcome to Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing. This is Cody here with another one of my solo episodes, and I did manage to squeeze in another episode of the James Bond 60th anniversary watch along series that I've been doing. This weekend, I had a chance to check out 1983's Octopussy, which is the final Roger Moore movie as well. This is our 14th total film since we've begun to do this, and 13th proper chronology James Bond film with the oddball Casino Royale thrown in there as well. Next up, we have the Never Say Never Again, starring Sean Connery's return, but again, there's some dispute over exactly who was allowed to use James Bond later in this year, 1983. So we'll get to that. And then Timothy Dalton will be coming along with us here starting in 1985 through the end of the decade. So we'll get to him in a bit. Well, Octopussy, classic or crap? I'll give you a hint. It was better than For Your Eyes Only, but that was tied for the worst movie we've seen so far. So, classic or crap? Let's take a look. We'll start today's podcast by taking a peek at our beginning two categories here, the title and the theme that we've been doing over and over. Octopussy is the title of the film in this one. There is some octopus symbolism in this that is used to represent, I suppose, a sort of criminal organization. We have a lady who Bond later finds out is called Octopussy, which was a name she had gotten in, I don't remember, childhood or something. It was kind of an awkward story. The whole name is kind of, even for especially the 80s, I guess 80s had some of that high schlock comedy going on when you think of Police Academy and Porky's and all of these over the top college campus movies and things like that. But naming a character Octopussy just to I don't know. I doubt they had the octopus in mind, and then they're like, what could we come up with as a name to go along with octopus? I'm positive they were like, he, it'd be funny. Spring Back Pussy Galore Part 2. He. It's not a strong title. It doesn't really fit the movie all that well. I mean, the character is named that, yes, but we'll talk about the women in the movie here in a bit. Overall, not enthused with this. I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5. It's kind of, like I said, feels kind of yucky to say, even though it is, funny at the same time, I suppose. But 2 out of 5, not great. It's a rough start. Theme on this one, we have the theme All Time High, which is the theme song for this one. This is by, oh man, I got to actually look this one up. This might be the one song, I'm not sure. Rita Coolidge. And it says in the adult contemporary singles chart, it was number 1. Let me repeat that. On the United States adult contemporary singles chart, which is code for the land of Kenny G and Michael Bolton. So you can imagine this is not exactly my cup of tea when it comes to a Bond theme. It did get up to number 36 on the Billboard Top 100, but again on this one, just didn't feel great. Again, perfectly fine song, but I don't know. Again, just was not. I wasn't feeling up for Bond. The weirder thing to me is that they continue to use these kind of ballady type songs on the movies where there's very little romance plot to it. It's just kind of weird that they, I don't know, they have the wrong song with the wrong movie, it almost seems like. But again, fine song, but just doesn't fit Bond. 6 out of 10. So, if you look at Roger Moore's movies in terms of themes, we had, oh man, Who? Oh yeah, 66677 and 9. The only great tune Roger Moore was given was the "Live and Let Die" theme song by Paul McCartney and Wings. That was his best theme song he had for his run. For my money, we'll go over some of this at the end of everything too. But for my money, Sean Connery's best song remains "Goldfinger" still by Shirley Bassey. Although "Diamonds Are Forever" by Shirley Bassey is pretty close as well. So there's that. Okay, so rough start here for this one, but we're going to make up some points, I promise, at some point here. Let's take a look at our three acting categories: Bond portrayal, the Bond women, and the villains in the film. Roger Moore, I really thought phoned it in the last one. For Your Eyes Only, I thought he was back kind of on his game here for this one. So I'm going to give him a 14 out of 15. He seemed crisp in his fighting scenes. He had great dialogue delivery. The dialogue lines themselves, the quotes in this movie were not as strong as some of the earlier ones, but there were, I don't know, certain things about him here just seemed to kind of stand out. So it was actually nice to see. His best performance, I thought, prior to this was The Man with the Golden Gun. And this is right up there, I actually thought, in terms of just purely his Bondism, thinking about his portrayal here and how he interacts with all of the people, not just the villains and the ladies, but also Q and M and everybody else along this movie. This was amongst Roger Moore's better performance, 14 out of 15. So going to make up some points from those last categories with Roger Moore's performance here. The women of this movie, okay, so we have essentially two ladies in this film, and actually, this will probably tell you, I have to actually look what the character is called. Magda is the name of the character here. That is early and seduces Bond, and this is part of the plot, but he seemed kind of infatuated with her. And then later on, we get the eponymous Octopussy here as the returning, and from that point forward, much focused love interest of Bond. The problem is they're both okay looking. Neither one's like a knockout smash out type, beauty. My opinion. This is all my opinion. But the actress who plays Octopussy, this is a lady by the name of Maud Adams, really just didn't do a lot in this one. Apparently she was also in The Man with the Golden Gun as a smaller character, which I didn't realize, but she was kind of stiff. Her delivery of the lines was kind of awkward again. She's again kind of following this, trope of the lady who oddly doesn't do a lot herself, even though we're supposed to also believe she runs an all-female criminal empire. So I have some issues with her. I didn't particularly enjoy the character. The other lady is not in the movie enough to really help, although she wasn't standout or anything. I'm just mentioning her because she seemed like she was going to be the Bond lady in this, and then she wasn't. So I actually have to say 7 out of 15 for the Bond women on this one also. Really not great. Like, that's the lowest score I've actually given anybody in this. Just really stiff and wooden. Actually, I'm reading here now that there is some notes that there was some backlash on the actress for playing this character as well. So that's kind of interesting. Polarized responses, it says, for Maud Adams' portrayal of Octopussy. Well, there we go. As far as villains in this movie, we have a couple here. We have a Russian, seems like a general who's not in full favor of the actual Soviet government, by the name of General Orlov. We have an Afghan prince by the name of Kamal Khan. Not Kamala Khan. I'm not talking about Ms. Marvel here. And then we have Octopussy, who's a jewel smuggler. Okay. Then we have Magda, who is, again, the lady who originally kind of seduced Bond. We have Gobinda, who is this kind of Indian-looking superpowered dude who can crush things in his hands, and he's like the physical adversary for Bond. And then we have Mishka and Grishka, who are Orlov's knife-throwing twin henchmen, who are also part of Octopussy's circus. So we have a pretty wide variety of memorable characters in this one. None of them really are total standouts as far as, like a character that we would be excited about. And it's hard to count Octopussy as a villain because though she is involved with the plot, we'll get to in a second here. Early in the movie, she turns and later joins Bond later in the movie, and actually begins to feud with Kamal Khan, another of the bad guys here. And we have, like I said, pretty good variety of like henchmen with a particular skill set that look imposing for different reasons. But we don't explore anybody in enough detail in this one because maybe there are a few too many bosses. I mean, at various points, we have 3 different bosses of the villains here, and that adds to the story, believe it or not, but it detracts from the villains because we don't get to spend enough time with any of them. So I'll say 7 out of 10, kind of average for the villains in this one. So if you're with me so far here, you're thinking to yourself, this movie doesn't sound great so far. We have a 2 out of 5 on title, a 6 out of 10 on the theme, 7 out of 15 for the women, and a 7 out of 10 for the villains. The only bright spot we've had is actually Roger Moore's performance so far, which was a 14 out of 15. Now, the last 2 categories we need to talk about are going to be the plot and the action. And well, it's going to do okay here. Let's take a look at this. Brief summary of Octopussy, the plot, if we can get through this. It is convoluted, which a lot of the Bond films are, I'm finding, but this one actually had a nice slow burn to it. Like I did feel like Bond was almost maybe more like Batman in this one, and that he was detective first and ass kicker second, but he did have to piece together exactly what was happening in this story, which, as the viewer who knows Bond's going to win the day at the end, I was intrigued just to come along on this journey and see, what Bond is going to discover and how that's going to link the pieces together as we go through. So brief summary compliments of Wikipedia here. I'm going to trim down what they have, but we have an Agent 009 who's dressed as a clown who is trying to escape from twin knife throwers, and he's carrying a counterfeit Fabergé egg. And in his dying breath, he stumbles into the British ambassador's office and dies. MI6 suspects the Russians, of course, and we have the real Fabergé egg that's being auctioned off in London, and so they send James Bond to go identify who the seller is. And while he's at the auction, Bond asks to see the egg, and he does a quick switcheroo sleight of hand where he swaps the fake egg for the real one, and then begins in a bidding war, which he has no intention of winning, but he just wants to drive the price up quite a bit. And he gets this guy, Kamal Khan, an exiled Afghan prince, to pay £500,000 for the counterfeit egg. Now, the guy doesn't know that it's a counterfeit egg, of course, at the time. And then Bond follows him all the way back to India, and he finds this guy gambling. There's a scene where Bond realizes the guy's using loaded dice, so he uses the guy's dice against him, wins a bunch of money, etc. We have Khan's henchwoman, if you will, Magda, who's the blonde lady in this movie, seduces Bond, and Bond lets her get away with the real Fabergé egg, which they have put one of Q's listening and tracking devices inside. So Bond now knows exactly where they're going. Gobinda, who is the huge dude here, knocks out Bond and takes him to Khan's palace, where presumably they were going to kill him, but Bond escapes. And as he listens to the bug that's in the egg, he finds out that Khan is working with Orlov, who is a Soviet general who is trying to expand the Soviet Union's influence into Western Europe, essentially. So we got a good 1980s Cold War plot here. One that, doesn't involve the nukes all going off across the world, at least as a direct part of the plot. So that was kind of refreshing as well. Okay, we have Bond going to a palace where he meets the owner, Octopussy, who is a wealthy businesswoman. She's also an illegal smuggler, and she also works with Khan. She also leads the Octopus cult, which is basically, led by Octopussy, and Magda's also a member of that, the blonde-haired one. Now, Octopussy is the dark-haired lady in this movie, so to keep the two separate here. Let's see here. Octopussy also has a history with Bond, though he wouldn't have known. Her father is somebody that Bond had arrested for treason, and Octopussy thanks Bond actually for her father committing suicide rather than facing trial and having to go to jail for all that, and invites Bond to be her guest. Bond has no intention of staying there for like the week that she suggests, though, as he is left alone. Okay, we find out meanwhile here that Orlov, the Russian general, has been supplying Khan with Soviet treasures, replacing them with replicas. And there's like a whole operation going here to design fakes, counterfeits. And Khan has been smuggling the genuine things into the West, and they're using Octopussy's circus troupe as the way to get that into the West, because they would let the circus go from one side of the Iron Curtain to the other side of the Iron Curtain, or the Berlin Wall, or whatever you want to say at that point. We have here next that some assassins are sent to kill Bond, but Bond and Octopussy escape. And we find out here that another henchman I didn't even mention, totally ridiculous, but it was again pretty memorable. There was this other guy, this like random mercenary that Khan pays to have go after Bond, and he has this ridiculous weapon, which is basically like a fishing line that he like flicks his wrist, and this fishing line like descends very quickly, and at the bottom of it there's this contraption that essentially looks like two rotating saw blades, like circular saw blades, and they like cut into whatever they're going to hit, be it wood or people or whatever, and then he can somehow retract them back up. This is like a real weapon this guy uses. How he has any fingers left, I'm not sure, but that's where that is. So anyway, we find that this guy has killed VJ, who I didn't mention, but he was like the contact in India that Bond had met earlier in the movie. So meanwhile, we have Orlov double-crossing everyone, and Octopussy in particular. And what we have here is that he has taken out the treasures that were supposed to be smuggled into the circus, and instead he has replaced it with a nuclear warhead that is going to explode at a circus performance for the USAF, the United States Air Force, in West Germany. Now, earlier in the movie, there was another scene where he had suggested some kind of plan to expand the Soviet influence, in the Soviet generals themselves in their meetings condemned this guy and said, like, you can't do what you're trying to do. We're trying to calm the world down. But this guy has the opposite idea. And therefore, we're going to think that, what he's trying to do essentially is blame the United States. The bomb would go off at a U.S. Air Force installation. It's going to look like it would probably be the United States' bomb that they had there, and then Europe would kind of, seek neutrality more than be aligned with United States, I guess, which would essentially allow the Soviets to come rolling back in then at that point. Okay, kind of a fun scene here as Bond takes Orlov's car and somehow gets it on railroad tracks. After the tires get shredded off, and he just runs the rims on the railroad tracks for quite a while. But it did make me wonder. I think railroad tracks, I don't know. I thought they were narrower than a car's axle would be from one wheel to the other, but I guess I'm not positive on that. That was a pretty cool idea either way. So this is happening, and now we have a chase that starts on the trains. This was kind of fun. We have Bond killing both of the assassins, Mishka and Grishka, the two knife throwers that he throws off the train, or kills and throws off the train. And then he ends up stealing a car after a lady wouldn't get out of a payphone, and to get to the airbase. We have Bond at the airbase now, but there is all of the West German police following him, so he has to disguise himself. So he goes into a trailer and somehow in about 30 seconds not only has on an entire clown outfit, but also the clown makeup. Very impressive, Mr. Bond. Okay, finally he convinces Octopussy while he's being held custody by the police that Khan has betrayed her. And once she realizes this by stealing a pistol and shooting the lock and seeing the nuclear warhead, she realizes that Bond is the one in the right here and she was double crossed. So she helps him deactivate the bomb. And of course, at 1 second left, it clicks off at 0, and Bond had just, retracted the piece out of the nuclear warhead. Everybody's safe, thank goodness. After this is over, we have Khan returning to his palace, getting ready to leave, but we have Bond and Octopussy also heading to the palace, and kind of it's a fun scene here where Octopussy's circus troupe, her circus troupe slash female smugglers that she has on her payroll, launch an assault on the grounds, and it was actually kind of funny because they defeat Khan's henchmen by using every manner of circus trick. So we had tightrope walkers in there, we had trapeze artists in there. I mean, anything you could think of was being used against the guards, which was, both silly and actually a pretty fun scene at the same time. Octopussy tries to kill Khan, but she doesn't pull the trigger, and then Gobinda, the big guy, captures her instead. But we have Octopussy's team, led by Magda, the blonde, overpowering the Khan's guards, and we have the two villains that are left here, Khan and Gobinda, who are trying to run away at this point. They take Octopussy as a hostage and they leave in an airplane. Bond manages to drive and catch the end of the plane, and essentially a pretty fun scene here again where Bond is like struggling on this plane as Khan is trying to drive it up in the air and then down low and like trying to shake Bond off, and Bond eventually sneaks up to the front of the plane and manages to disable one of the engines by pulling some cords out of a panel. And then we have Gobinda, who's sent out to fight with Bond on the plane's roof. He doesn't last very long in the air. He gets thrown off, so presumably dead from that height. At least we would have to say, not Jaws style, because he just left the circus. Hey-oh, he didn't land on a circus like Jaws did. And then we have Bond and Octopussy jumping off the plane just as it's about back on the land again. And they, of course, duck and cover when they roll after the plane is going to fall. And the plane falls and crashes, and Khan hadn't made it out inside and explodes, which I do have to note was one of the worst explosions I've seen in a film in a long time. There is very clearly like the plane hits this rock wall, and the explosion was like 10 feet to the left of the plane. That begins the explosion, and then the plane explodes right after that. But it's pretty fun. All right, let's see what else do we have here. Finishing this up, we actually don't get like a surprise second attack in this one, or third attack, or fourth attack, as we do in some of these movies. We get Minister of Defense of Britain and General Gogol discussing transport of the jewelry back to the Soviet Union, and Bond is with Octopussy on a private yacht in India with her crew. All of the girls are there on this boat, and this is another scene. Like, it's weird, the last 10 minutes this movie had most of the problems I had with it. Bond is in one of these ridiculous setups where like his leg is elevated and in a cast and tied to the top of a bed, and then he has an arm that's stuck up, and Octopussy's kissing on him and stuff, and he's all mad because he can't move and stuff. And then instantly he just breaks out of it. And she's like, oh, I'm paraphrasing, but like, oh, I just wish you could move. And he's like, well, why didn't you say so? And then breaks out of all of his bondage, and suddenly he's totally fine. So I guess he just recuperated very quickly. Otherwise, I don't know why he would be trying to trick her. Maybe, no, I have no idea. That's just got to be somebody thought that was going to be funny, but it kind of comes off as stupid in the moment of the plot. Okay. I want to mention some other things here. There was this fun scene where Bond was fighting some henchmen in this one also. And we get all of these like cliche India scenes when he's fighting this. So he pulls a sword out of a sword swallower's mouth, which he then uses to like attack the bad guys, and then hands it back to the sword swallower and basically says like, you better put this back yourself. He fights one guy and happens to throw him on a bed of coals that happens to be nearby for people to walk over. And then also there was a guy who's laying on a bed of nails, and then for some reason he gets up to watch Bond and the henchman start to fight, and of course Bond takes the henchman and throws him down on the bed of nails. And it's just funny, like they use all those cliches in a fun way though. So before we get to those last two scores, my favorite line in this one, again, there wasn't a lot to pick from here, but I chose a line by Kamal Khan, actually. And he tells James Bond that, quote, "You have a nasty habit of surviving," which I just thought was a really fun quote. It's worded really well. So, all right, there's that. Now, in terms of the plot of this movie, it was a fun detective film. There were some parts that were still a little bit silly here and there, but overall it was pretty good. Yeah, I liked this one. It had a good detective aspect to it. So I'm going to say 23 out of 30 as far as that. And action in this movie, I thought about this a couple times here because, what were we on? Moonraker as the first movie out of all these I awarded a perfect action score to. And look out, folks. This had all sorts of fun scenes with the chases and with the plane fights and the stuff, the circus and everything else. I am awarding Octopussy a 15 out of 15 on action. It had everything I wanted, from James Bond fighting a wide variety of bad guys, and good hand-to-hand, good props, good setups, good scenes, good chaos scenes where we have, like the guards fighting all of the girls, like fun stuff like that. So full 15 on the action here. Okay. Check my math here on this one. 38, 45, 52, 66, 72, 74 points is our total for Octopussy on this one. It does make it into the classic category, and for my money goes down as the third best of the Roger Moore films, behind Live and Let Die and The Man with the Golden Gun. All right, well, that's going to wrap up Roger Moore for us here on our 60th anniversary James Bond watch along. I'll be lucky if I can keep up the pace of one of these a week now that I am full-time back in school here, but I'll do my best. We got to, as I said, take that quick detour to Sean Connery returning as an older Bond and Never Say Never Again, same year. So we'll check the box office on that one when we get to that one. This one did fairly well, 187 million on a budget of 27 million. So not a bad return on investment there for the people that are producing this. Okay, that's our 14th installment. Looks like we have, I don't know, maybe less than that. We might be past the halfway point here. Still hoping to get in the GoldenEye playthrough at some point when we get around that, with Pierce Brosnan's first movies coming up. And if you haven't had a chance to listen to our Monday podcast this week, definitely check out the insanity of the Barkley Marathons, which is just this super bizarre event that is out there, and all of the crazy details. You won't even believe half of these. If you haven't listened to that podcast yet, go do that from our Monday episode. Otherwise, check us out everywhere you normally do. Social media, check us out on TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We are on all your favorite podcast streaming platforms. This has been the Fawn Pod, the Fawncast. This has been Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing. This is Cody, and we'll see you all next time. Take care of yourselves out there, everyone.